Great Wednesday. Welcome to the Fully Human Connections podcast. I'm your host, King. I'm joined by my co-host, Reggie. How you doing today, Reggie?
Doing well, King. Always good to be with you here on a Wednesday morning.
Equal. And since we're both in a state of gratitude, why don't we extend that to give our list of what we're grateful for? Would you like to go ahead and go first?
Yeah, sure. So I'm just grateful for my standard, but not in any way minimized gratitude for indoor plumbing, a refrigerator with good food in it, and access to more food if I need it. And I'm grateful for being able to recognize the difference between what's happening in the present moment in my life and in other people's lives, and the thought process that very often can catastrophize or dwell on worst case scenarios, and being able to catch my mind when it does that. Not that it has ever done that recently or anything, but I've heard that could happen. And then just to be, relatively healthy and have a relatively good, well-functioning mind at this point in my life. So I'm grateful for all that, grateful for good friends and what family I have remaining. And I'm grateful to be here with you this morning.
I concur. Myself, I'm grateful for my life, my health, my ability to sit here, walk, talk, stand, breathe, and have a sound mind. Grateful for a mother who's still alive and still has sound mind as well, and the energy of love. We're going through different transitions with her as far as the older she gets, call it different phases she has to go through. But most importantly, her mind is still sound and her love energy is still there. So I'm still grateful for that. I'm grateful for the problems and challenges I have in my life because, again, through those, I learn and I grow. And, I don't know if it's because of my age, but it's astonishing how clearly things seem to be when you learn. It's like you can learn much faster at this age. So I don't know if that's a accumulated wisdom I've gone through my age or just the different energy we are in the universe. I don't know, maybe it's a combination of all those things. But I'm also grateful for the opportunity to be here with you as well. So looking forward to a great show today. So what's your spiritual energy number?
I choose a 10 this morning. I didn't really have to do too much choosing because the energy was there, but I just topped it off at the tank just to be sure it was up there at a 10. So yeah, I'm good to go.
I join you at a 10. As you know, like I said, I definitely don't see any reason. There's no value, I should say. It could be a reason, but there's no value in choosing a number less than 10. I definitely want to reemphasize that it's a choice because, once you understand it's a choice, then you are in control of your emotions. You're in control of how you respond to challenges. And more importantly, you're in control of your grace and your gratitude once you realize it's a choice. As long as you look at it as being external, something happening to you, then you're always going to have justification to be less than a 10. Like I said, at the end of the day, the engineer in me doesn't see any value in saying, okay, I'm going to be a 2 today. It doesn't make your day better. Things doesn't just go smoothly as a result. So I feel why I choose it. As a matter of fact, you'll feel the negative energy. You'll feel the dread. You'll feel all the, I would say, added energy around being a 2. Yeah, you feel that. You'll feel it in your body. You feel it in your mind. You feel it in how people interact with you and how you perceive the world at that particular time. So it's definitely, you can definitely see I would say the cons of being a 2. So with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get started with our topic. What's our topic for today?
Yeah, so we're going to, as always, we're speaking in the context of my 2022 book, Healing America's Narratives. And the subtitle is especially important today. The subtitle is The Feminine, the Masculine, and Our Collective National Shadow. So folks who are, somewhat familiar with our conversations over these last 2+ years understand that we've identified the collective national shadow of the country as manifesting through an unhealthy, group-centric iteration of masculine energy. So we're not saying masculine is bad, but we're saying that an unhealthy group-centric version of it is dangerous in the absence of a healthy feminine. So that's the shadow of the country. It's not the country. It's the part of the country that tens of millions of Americans tend to want to deny. So more specifically today, we want to bring this from the abstract language of masculine and feminine and unhealthy and healthy to current events, and to look at the ongoing work of Carol Gilligan, who was one of the first researchers to point out that a lot of the research that was done on adults in the United States was primarily done by male researchers who had masculine points of view, and much of the research was only done on men. I mean, that began to change after a while, but she pointed it out, especially in her 1982 book called "In a Different Voice." And at the time, the different voice was the voice of the feminine, which was, not present in most of American life in terms of any kind of leadership in the corporate world, in the government, and a lot of other places. And more recently, in 2023, 40 years later, after much more research and hundreds of articles and other books, she published a very small volume entitled "In a Human Voice," where she makes the move to point out that what she thought was a feminine voice was really an integrated human voice that carried both the healthy masculine and the healthy masculine, the healthy masculine and the healthy feminine together. And if you think of the folks in your life who are the wisest, most compassionate, healthiest, I would say, those who are concerned with both justice and mercy, intimacy and solitude, can have a balance of all these apparent polarities, you'll find that they have a healthy integration of masculine and feminine energies. So there's a lot more to say about her research, and if we need to say it, we can address it. But specifically in the context of what's going on in the United States in this 9th month of the 3rd decade of the 21st century, 2 months almost to the day from election day, presidential election, there's a stark difference in the two major parties, Republican and Democratic, and their candidates, if you look at healthy and unhealthy aspects of masculine and feminine energy. And last thing I'll say is, traditionally, when we speak about masculine energy, when it's healthy, we're speaking about an individual approach to things, a strong sense of agency or assertiveness, kind of tending toward justice more than mercy, tending towards wisdom and knowing more than compassion. Whereas the feminine energy tends more towards community or embrace or relationship, as opposed to individuality, more towards mercy than justice, more towards compassion than wisdom. And so all of those traits are positive. There's none of those traits, wisdom, compassion, justice, mercy, agency, they're all positive traits, but they can manifest in unhealthy ways. And there's a stark difference in the parties and in the specific candidates, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, when it comes to these healthy and unhealthy masculine and feminine energies. So that's the focal point for us to get started today.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for choosing such a great topic. I guess I'll begin by, offer my comments by asking a question, see a little more clarity for myself and maybe for our listeners as well. So would you say that women who are being showing individualistic behaviors and characteristics, even though they're female women in the context of their female gender, they're exhibiting masculine energy at that point? Is that a safe assumption or a safe statement to make?
Yeah, so but I'll answer that question and I'll just expand it slightly to, I think, to put it into a fuller context. Any biological man or woman and anyone who has transitioned from one biology to another, anyone who's gay or straight, I can simplify it by saying anyone, not to qualify, any human being, regardless of their biology or their sense of identity, can manifest healthy or unhealthy um, masculine or feminine traits. So absolutely yes. If there's a woman who is assertive in a healthy way, and we could argue that that's a good integration of healthy masculine energy into herself. As we move forward, when you and I are both either buried or burnt or buried at sea, and we're no longer here, 100 or 500, 1,000 years from now, I hope that humans look back on us and this time and basically say, it's all just humans. We're all just human, and we're different in terms of biology for sure. No man I know has ever carried a baby, to term and delivered it. But absolutely yes. And any man who leans more towards mercy and embrace and is really good in relationship and listening is manifesting some of the healthy aspects of the feminine. So did I answer your question?
You did. You did. Was you created some more questions. So, and it may seem obvious, but I just want to make sure that we laid out as clearly and plainly as possible.
Yeah.
So, based on the two presidential candidates that we have before us, which one would you say is exhibiting feminine energy?
Yeah. And I wish it were more. I wish it were less polarized. Because I try to be just honest and not political. But in terms of these two candidates, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, um, Kamala Harris exhibits an integration of masculine and feminine, and more often than not, it's healthy. She didn't get to be a prosecutor, a district attorney, and an attorney general and a senator um, in a primarily white male world. All right. When she began, law enforcement was primarily a white masculine world. She didn't get there by being gentle all the time and not being assertive. So she had some healthy masculine energy in order to get where she got. I don't see any evidence, and goes back to the 1980s, late 70s, early 80s, when I first became aware of Donald Trump. I don't see any evidence of him showing any healthy feminine traits. And much of his masculine evidence is unhealthy. That goes back to when he would go walking through the Miss Universe dressing rooms because he was a co-owner or the owner of the pageant, and his bragging about being able to touch women inappropriately because he was a celebrity and he'd get away with it, to the fact that he has been party to over 3,500 lawsuits before 2016 because suing and being sued is just part of what he's done as an adult in his life. I don't see a lot of caring, mercy, compassion in him as presidential candidate or as a human being. And I do see some definitely more of that in Kamala Harris.
What would you say as far as your opinion, your thoughts concerning the actual culture of our country, meaning that the policies that we outlay, you know, more, I would say, more timely, more present is kind of our policies toward um, Israel, how we support Israel and continue to support Israel financially. Do you see that? Well, let me phrase it this way: the position as president, the role as president.
Mhm.
Do you see that depending on who the candidate can be, can actually have or exhibit some feminine energy in their role as far as empathy, as far as justice, as far as community and seeing humanity in that context? Is that possible in that seat, in that role with the current, with where our policies are laid? In other words, do you see that the person shaping policies or the policy shaping the person?
Yeah, that's a huge question, and this is this is going to sound like a political answer, but I really think it's true. I don't think you can escape either of those. I think the best of us, when I say us, I mean people, and especially people who would want the job of president. I always joke that I question the sanity of anybody who would want to go through what you have to go through to become the president of the United States or any major leader. But that being said, I'm gonna just let's just suspend our disbelief for a moment and uh, embrace the idea that that's some people who run for office are doing it in good faith. They really want to serve the country and make it a better place for all people. Um, and getting into, and let's say this person wins, getting into office. As you know, Barack Obama was really, he said this out loud several times because he was a really good campaigner, one of the best orators in the 20th and 21st. Well, he's a 21st century guy in terms of political office, but one of the best speakers that we've had in the White House for years. And that's really a great campaign tool. But once you get into the Oval Office and sit behind a resolute desk, you have to be able to govern. You can make a great State of the Union address, you can give a nice press conference, but you need to be able to get things done. And so what ends up happening, back to your question, is somebody gets in there with great intentions and wants to use those intentions, and let's just use the example you put out there, to better navigate the Israeli-Palestinian issue. The system is going to change them because you don't become president and suddenly get what you want. No president has ever done that. Some presidents have gotten more of what they wanted to achieve than others, but no one has. You suddenly have this huge machinery, this huge system, which was built by white men in order to take care of the needs of white men back in the 1700s, which has been amended in some good ways, but it still primarily serves the purposes of wealthy white men, despite the fact that we've had a biracial president, Barack Obama, and we have, there's a chance that we might have a woman who was also biracial president in Kamala Harris. But make no mistake, with all of the progress made, the system is still dominated by wealthy white men. Doesn't mean there aren't some other people involved, but that's how it was built. So the system is definitely going to influence the person as the person tries to influence the system. My experience as an observer of that kind of power, I'm not a politician, but as somebody who has dealt with local power and the power as a high school basketball coach with players, a teacher, et cetera, my relationships with my clients as a coach, the system is way more powerful than any individual. There have been some remarkable individuals who have helped shift the system slightly, but even their work continues to be pushed back on by the system. I mean, Martin Luther King Jr. and John Lewis and all of those involved in the civil rights movement from the 50s into the 60s into the 70s. They had some great victories, but the Republican Party since then and the United States Supreme Court more recently has pushed back on some of those victories in terms of voting rights already, making it harder for both poor and people of color to vote. So there's always this interplay of system and individual, and that's, you know, I would love to see one individual in good faith come in and shift things for the better. And for me, the better means a government that in fact serves all of the people and doesn't try to disenfranchise any of them, and is more willing to spend money on those who are most in need than on the latest AI weaponry, um, or, you know, other means of mass destruction, which is what, as a nation, we do and have done. So that was kind of meandering, but I think I addressed what you asked. If not, tell me.
I mean, you have in a certain way. You know, I would say for me, I've gone through a range of different thoughts and I would say analysis as well as opinions, particularly about the presidential race, you know, when it was Biden and Trump, and going through choosing to vote for Biden primarily because he wasn't Trump. And that was the only reason you were really voting for Biden. At least that's how I looked at it. And that's how it was marketed. It was like, he's just not Trump. Trump's going to destroy democracy. You got to vote for Biden because Biden's going to save it, so to speak, or he's going to continue the status quo. And then my thoughts about that was, well, the status quo really, is it really just? Yeah, we could say it can get a lot worse, but it also depends on the perspective. Like if I was, of Palestinian descent, I don't think it would matter for the most part who was president because, you know, it seems as though, when Kamala was asked a question about her policies or her will go forth, would it change? And she said no. She didn't say no, but she basically don't get a standard political answer. We stand behind Israel 100%, and Israel has a right to defend itself, and we're still going to continue to arm, Israel with an army in Israel. And for me, that's one issue. But what really has me, kind of on the fence now, still analyzing things, is when she looks at it and says, "Well, housing," and she lays out. That's something I'm much more familiar with. That's I got to take other people's words instead of other people's opinion. I do see the human atrocities going on, but housing is something that's my background. Now listen to her plan and say, I want to create over 13 million new housing units. 13 or 30 million. I forgot, but I know it's at least 13 million that she wants to create as a way to deal with all these corporations that's buying housing into the housing game. To me, it's like for that to be your solution to that, as opposed to just creating policies to stop the corporations from doing it. How about we do that first before we create more units? Because what you're saying is you're creating more units. There's no this. You're not decentralizing corporations from going out and buying more additional units. You just create more units, and they're always going to win because they have the cash flow. So it's in essence, it looks as though you're doing something that benefits everyone, but when you really look at it from a true numbers perspective, you really put it on paper as opposed to getting out of the weeds and the rah chants of the message. You realize that you're not really doing anything because again, you're giving the same individuals who have the capability to buy housing now more housing stock to buy. Right. And yeah, so in other words, a few more homeowners will probably be able to get more housing, but you're not shifting that, changing that paradigm at all. You're not doing anything at all about that. And to me, that's a part of, I would say, our electoral process that I wish constituents would become more critically aware and do more critical thinking and really understand what's being told to us. You know, because that's going to be major going forward. If you can't buy a house because corporations are actually buying multiple properties, and they're always going to be able to outbid you because they have cash and they're buying for the long term. That's that to me is a trend that needs to stop immediately. I was watching last night. It was an old interview, but it just came across my YouTube feed for whatever reason. It was an interview that Steve Colbert was doing with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Arnold Schwarzenegger was responding to a question. I forgot what the question was, but his response was he showed a picture of himself and Gorbachev, and he was saying how, yeah, the question was, have you ever asked for an autograph for anybody in your life? And he said no, not that he could think of, you know. And then he said, but if he were to ask for an autograph, someone would be someone like Gorbachev. And his point he was getting was that our politicians here that we have are cowards in the context that they're not willing to go out here and challenge the status quo, change history. Gorbachev said, I'm going to end communism. And, we got, that's something that has been in the country for Russia was pretty much based on communism. And he was willing to go ahead and eliminate that and risk political failure in his life in order to make it happen. So he was talking about how he admired that. And our politicians today, they lack that. They lack the strength, the courage to change anything. They just continue like they're more party centered than they are political centered as far as being of service. And I really thought about that. And I thought about looking at the lens to the politicians that we currently have. There's very few politicians that I would say. I'm talking not on a local level. I'm talking about a congressional level that we see play out in front of us. That I would actually say this person, to your point, you alluded earlier, the John Lewis's, you know, that stood up and is willing to put their political careers and not only their political career, but their actual lives on the line to bring about change, to bring about justice. And that to me is what it's lacking. And that for me, from a critical thinking standpoint, that's why I can't get excited about either candidate, you know. And for a minute, I was excited about when Joe Biden dropped out. I was excited because for me I was bothered by the fact that they kept overlooking her when they kept saying, "Well, Joe Biden doesn't have it. There's no one in the Democratic Party. What are we going to do if Joe Biden wants to step down?" To me, the obvious choice was her. And now that she's, you know, the main Democratic choice, and I'm hearing her from a policy standpoint, and I'm realizing, okay, I'm not seeing the political courage other than I'm hearing what we're going to do that Trump's not doing. Right? We're going to protect, abortion rights. Obviously, that takes some courage, but most of the country wants that. So anyway, I know I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but where I'm going with all this is the fact is that I would love to be excited about at this particular time a political candidate that's showing that feminine energy, uh, bringing forth community and bringing forth justice. Excuse me. And I just want to end all that with a question. What are your thoughts about what I'm outlining? Do you see something different? Do you feel something different? I just kind of want to get your perspective on it.
Yeah, there's a lot in what you said, and it just reminded me as you were speaking the reason I chose to address this country through both a historical and a psychological developmental perspective, because I want to go back to Kamala Harris just for a second about Israel. She also said, and it was a political answer, but I trust that she meant it. If any politician wants to be president of the United States and they don't come out in support of Israel, they're not going to win the election in this country.
Right.
So and again, that's part of the problem with coming in good faith and telling the truth. I told the truth and I lost by 100 electoral votes, so I never got to be president. So the other person wins, I'm done. But she did say, everything that you nailed it, about Israel's right to exist. We're going to, continue to help them protect themselves. And then she did say that she also was concerned with Palestine's right to exist and the fact that some 30 or 40,000 Palestinians have died since October 7th, 2023. And that was a risky thing to say. I mean, not saying it was risky because there's people that are, don't like Israel anymore. And so anybody in good faith is kind of stuck with that. And I don't know the solution to this. Do you just lie? Which I think a lot of politicians do at some level, or, you kind of spin it. But I just wanted to say that piece. But more importantly, what the housing. So the housing piece, I'm going to tie together housing, Israel and Gaza, Israel and Palestine. Two things, both developmentally and in terms of masculine and feminine energy. Because the energy of this country has traditionally been masculine. Anybody disagree with that out there? Raise your hand, because wealthy white male founders, and for the most part, historically, it's been wealthy white males running the country. Some exceptions. When we get to the idea of development, and development by definition means moving increasingly towards a view of the world that is more inclusive, comprehensive, includes more, balanced. So it includes more, but it's not lopsided like this. It's a balanced inclusion. And because it's including more, it's more complex. And that's what the research has shown for over 50 years now of studying adult development. So that's science. And you can see it in day-to-day life. So the move that would allow, and notice that, inclusive, including more, and balancing and being comprehensive, those are feminine traits. The masculine is the individual, assert, move forward, justice as opposed to mercy. The feminine is more merciful. So the move that says something like this, and this gets into what Kamala Harris said, what the Republicans say, what the Democrats say. Here's one iteration of the healthy move, I think. Israel has a right to exist, and so does Palestine. This is a very complex problem that's been going on for decades, and in fact was created by Europe, created by the West. When they created the Israeli state to give Israelis a place to live because they didn't have it, and which then alienated the Palestinians because they didn't really have a place to live either. And that was really created by Europeans, as with most of the problems. It's not funny, but most of the problems in North America, Central America, South America, parts of Southeast Asia, et cetera, colonialism. But to be able to say, this is really a difficult issue, to honor the existence of Israel, to honor the existence, let me just rephrase that, to honor the existence of the Israeli people, and to honor the existence of the Palestinian people and their rights to a decent, good life. The vast majority, I think, of Israeli and Palestinian people want that at this stage of the game. It's the leadership of Hamas and Israel that doesn't want it. So to address that in this country, which again, we're not Israel, we're not Palestine. We have our fingers in a lot of pies, but we're not either one of them, and we've always supported Israel. To address that in this country, which is polarized, to a moderately ignorant electorate, because of the polarization, the people that know one side of the story but not the other, and they're really not interested in the complexity of a lot of these issues. To say something like that is to be misunderstood. Because to say what I just said is a developmental level beyond what many people who vote in this country can understand. I'll give you another example of it. And let me go to the housing first. So the housing piece, same thing, development and masculine versus feminine and shadow. Corporations want to buy, if they buy up the houses so they can resell them for more to people who can afford them, or to rent them so they can have an ongoing source of income. That's grounded in greed and excess, two of the shadow traits. Right? And to your point, until that gets addressed, the power of corporate wealth in lobbying and influencing legislation, and even more recently, judicial decisions, because of the money and gifts that people like Alito and Thomas have taken on the Supreme Court. You're right. Until that's addressed, really legislating, executing, and judging in a way that serves the interests of all American people is going to be really hard, because you and I don't have the same lobbying power as the housing industry, the oil industry, the whatever it is. So it's really complex. Even the abortion issue is another example. It's the last thing I'll say, because I know I'm spreading it out. But it comes down to this developmental worldview and be able to deal with complexity. When somebody asks me, not that anybody really does very often, and typically the question is, are you pro-life or pro-choice? So there's two ways to respond to that question. I'll give you both. One is, ask me a better question. Right? The second one is yes. Now, anybody who's really interested in having a conversation wants to know more. What do you mean by a better question? And so pro-life and pro-choice are sweeping labels. They're generalizations. They don't really mean anything when people use them. For example, the people who claim to be pro-life tend not to really want to give too much money to poor women who do bring children into the world. And they're also against Head Start and early childhood education that's publicly funded. So they want the birth, so they're pro-birth, not really pro-life. And they tend to really want to keep guns on the street. And they tend to be behind most of the wars that Democrats or Republicans want to go into.
And they're pro-death penalty as well. So
yeah, and so they're not really pro-life; they're pro-birth. So the way to, here's the complexity of the abortion issue, and it is a complex issue. I believe that life begins at conception. There are really brilliant scientists and doctors who make all the arguments about the heartbeat and the viability of the fetus and all that stuff, and it's all true what they say, and it's partial. But once the sperm fertilizes the egg, that being is not an oak tree, it's not a squirrel, it's not an earthworm, it's human, because two humans got together to create it. And if there were never another abortion in the world, I think that would be a good thing. That's part one. Part two is, since the time of Adam and Eve, all right, I'm saying that hyperbolically. I'm exaggerating, I'm being hyperbolic there. But since the earliest days of humans navigating on the earth, men have dominated women right up to the current day. It's gotten better. It's still not there. I don't think, and the men had, priests in robes who were celibate and men wearing wigs in the early days of the country who were making laws decided that, a woman doesn't have the right to choose abortion. And I believe that life begins at conception and a woman has a right to choose what she does with her body. So that's a real tension there. And I don't know any women who celebrate abortion. I don't know any women who think, yeah, it's really great to go in there and have an abortion. Great experience. Get it done. I don't know. I mean, I don't know a lot of women who had abortions, but I know probably 3, maybe 4. Really traumatic choice that they had to make. So if we could get beyond the us versus them, there's that us-centric thing, pro-life against pro-choice, and move into this, we're all in this together perspective. Does anybody really want lots of abortions? You won't find anybody raising their hand on the pro-choice side to that. So we have to have a more complex, accurate conversation and stop throwing sweeping generalizations and slogans and labels at each other. For the most part, in my observation, there are virtually no talking heads on television and the streaming news services, and very few people in the United States Congress or on the Supreme Court that are willing and able to have those kind of conversations to move beyond the labels. Until they are, we're going to just keep on. We're going to be the people with the glass houses throwing stones at each other. And that's a developmental move to deal with the inclusivity, the comprehension, the balance, and the complexity of all of these issues. Because while Netanyahu is doing his dance and we're going to support Israel, we're going to keep giving them weapons, thousands of Palestinians, including children, are dying every day. And you're not pro-life if you're okay with that. And so again, I'm not taking a side here, but the complexity is that which it seems most people are afraid of or maybe cognitively can't do. But they want to win the argument and they don't see a bigger picture. That, I think, is at the heart of all the issues, whether it's housing, whether it's abortion, whether it's Gaza and I don't want to just say Gaza, Palestine and Israel. It's this really unhealthy, typically masculine-dominated, group-centric, us versus them energy. And I think Kamala Harris has a better chance of addressing that than Donald Trump does. I don't think he understands what's at stake in terms of international policy and even the abortion issue. He's trying to, he bragged that he overturned Roe v. Wade by appointing 3 Supreme Court justices. And now he's kind of backpedaling a little bit, seeing that wasn't really a popular thing now. So he doesn't stand for anything other than he wants to win. So that's an oversimplified version, but if we had 40 hours to talk, the Washington Post has done it. The New York Times has done it. Even Fox News on occasion, not so much recently, has done it. He doesn't stand for anything. And as you say, neither candidate excites us. I think maybe that's because we're getting older. It's like, all right, you got to do something really unique to get me excited. But I do have a clear preference in this case. So I know I kind of spread that out across various issues, but that's why it comes back to me almost always, to development, worldview, shadow, and this unhealthy masculine that still wields most of the power on the planet.
Yeah. Well, I just want to make sure I clarify that when it comes to Palestine and Israel, I agree with you 100%. Strategy-wise, no presidential candidate is going to win without saying we offer our full support to Israel. Even though people want her to come out and be much more, diplomatic and say something along the lines of, well, I'm going to pull back and make sure that we put up, arms, we don't ship as many arms. Oh, that sounds great, but that's not going to win a presidential election.
Right.
I know that. I don't know why people I get why people want her to say that because it's humane. But again, if you really want her to win, you can't expect her to come out and say anything contrary to the current policy toward of Israel and Palestine. Now, with that issue being put aside, now if I was a woman, I could definitely get excited about it because now she's saying, "Here's what I'm going to do as far as women's reproductive rights. That I'm going to sign that bill." So that's part of this showing courage, but at the same time, that's kind of what the country wants anyway. So it's not showing as much courage. And then obviously you're a woman, so it's kind of expected to be playing in that lane, in that space. I just kind of wish that, and on that single issue, I would say, and I want to put this out there on, obviously social media, that I will vote for Kamala for that single issue there. So I think women have the rights to make their own choice when it comes to that. I don't think men should have any say whatsoever in that, you know. And when people ask me am I pro-life or pro-choice, my question is always, whose life are you pro? That's the question
Mhm.
I throw back at them.
Yeah.
Because obviously you're not pro everybody's life. If we dig deeper down that rabbit hole, we can get to the point. You're not really pro-life. You're just really anti something else. We're going to get to the root of it. But again, I just kind of wish she would also stick her, I would say, um, sword, so to speak, in the ground, or make the say it around housing to say, because you can't come out and say, well, I'm also going to cap, pricing, price gouging, all those things when you go into corporations there. So it's kind of like you're hinting at corporations, you know, instead of just coming directly at them.
Mhm.
But you're getting all the fervor of coming directly at them. So it's like, why not just come directly at them? Is my point. Just come out and say, listen, if I get elected, I'm creating legislation that corporations can't buy any more than 10 houses or whatever you're going to say that brings more stability back to the housing market to allow more affordable housing to happen. Make that statement, stick with it. I think that's something else people can rally behind, particularly families and men beyond just the abortion issue. And that's where I'm going with that. It's kind of like what Obama did with when he got in office, and this is when he got in office, and then hold the banks accountable to, when it came from all the predatory lending that we had dealt with before.
Yep.
And he had a chance to hold him accountable, and he didn't. He showed that he was going to be corporate at the end of the day. And that to me is where I think for most Americans who are critical thinkers that sit on the fence and that would love to get behind a candidate and say, I'm not only going to vote for you, but I'm also going to put my money behind you. And I'm also going to put my social capital behind you by going out there and letting everybody know this is my vote and they should join me. And here's why. So that's just kind of where I am with it, is that I would love to see more of that. And I just can't believe that when it came to her having an opportunity in a CNN interview to really lay out, here's what my policies are, she's not choosing that path when they're already saying that that's your critique, is that you don't choose a path. And for her not to come out and definitively say, here's where I stand, here's what I want to do, and here's why, that just kind of, it's like if you use an analogy, if your parents are saying that you don't eat all your food, the first time after the conversation, you still got food on your plate, and you're just playing around in it. It doesn't really make anybody feel comfortable that you're gonna change your behaviors going forward. But at the end of the day, like you said, when it comes to sanity, and that's where I would say my reasons for leaning toward Kamala is as well. Trump just looks insane on every level. There's something sane about him, and it's so divisive that it's to the point now where I hear people who advocate for Trump, and they can't even tell you why. They'll try to tell you, like, to me, I laugh at anybody who's here in Maryland, where I am, or northern states, talking about the border issue. Like that's going to have any impact in your life whatsoever, right? And you can't tell me that your reasons for voting for president really comes down to whether one person who you believe will make the border safer than the next, where data shows that Biden's administration was border crossings has slowed down considerably under his administration. So you don't have the data to back up the fact that you're saying that other than Trump's rhetoric, right? And yet you say you want to vote for him. So to me, it really just discounts you as a critical thinker. You're just part of the cult, right? Um, so I said all that to say is what the topic you laid out, being the masculine and feminine energy. I agree 100% that we got to look more into studying that as a society and understanding how do we tap more into the feminine energy and how do we become more aware of what that looks like. Now you laid out obviously some of the differences being community, being one of justice, of being empathetic, showing emotional intelligence, those type of things. And that's what I would love to see more of, being even talked about on a greater scale.
Hmm.
Like, if this is where we're going to be, I mean, in other words, if we don't, this is the direction we're headed, as a society. Because to your point, I believe most people just want to get on with their lives.
Yep.
We don't want to be as divided as we are, right? Now, the media, of course, keeps us divided as we are because it creates more clicks. If you could put a thumbnail on your YouTube video to say, you know, Kamala is an idiot, 10 reasons why, you're going to get people to click on it, both left and right. You're going to get the right to, oh, okay, I like what this person's saying, so I want to be reassured in my feelings of it. And the left is going to want to click on it to sit here and say, I want to challenge you on all those points. I don't agree with you. But there's no integrity behind your post. And that to me is what I think is really the crux of my issue, is that as we let YouTube become bigger, and I'm a huge YouTuber, I would say at this stage, I would say I consume about 90% of my video consumption is YouTube, just because I can choose what I want to watch and I can learn so much. And sit here and see how many people have just really gone the way of, I'm going to just create clickbait. And I don't care at all about, all I really want is advertisers and sponsors, and I want to generate money, and I want to become an influencer. So whatever, selling my soul in order to do that, I want to do that. And that part to me is the scariest part of everything about where the country is going right now in the world. Is that seems to be the direction we're going. And I still say we're still at the tip of the start of this whole create your own media phase. We're not even at the adolescent stage. We're still at the very beginning stage. So if we don't get control of it now, it's just really going to get out of hand and become worse at that point.
Yeah. Amen to that.
Well, we've reached a point of the show where, we kind of laid out some dismal things, and, and I always like to bring us back home to the point where, okay, unlike every other show that's out there, it's not just to give our opinion and analysis about what the current problems are, but what are some practical ways that people can begin to start becoming more fully human, think more fully human, and take steps to bring about the justice in their lives. So please lay out some next steps and strategies for us.
Yeah. So one of the things I'll say is, if I grounded today's conversation in Carol Gilligan's work, for a variety of reasons, and her book In a Human Voice, which came out in 2023, is a really full volume, but it's under 150 pages. It might be under 130. It's a small volume, and it's worth reading. It might be a little bit challenging if the idea of the masculine and feminine and development is a new topic, but it's definitely a readable volume. And one way into it, and I think this is really important because her voice for me has been really clear for years as a reader and a learner. She was interviewed, I think, late in 2023 on NPR, but it was on WBUR in Boston. And if you do a search for Carol Gilligan In a Human Voice NPR, it'll come up. It's about 11-minute interview. And on that page, there's a downloadable PDF of the epilogue to the book, the final pages of the book. So you can read for free. I don't know how many pages it is. But again, it's Carol Gilligan In a Human Voice is the name of the book. But if you put those words into Google, it'll come up, for NPR WBUR interview late 2023. And it's worth 11 minutes of just listening to the interview, but she talks about her own worldview shifting over a period of 40 years and more research, and why she has been saying and writing what she's been saying and writing. Other than that, familiarize yourself with the differences between individuality and relationship, justice and mercy, wisdom and compassion, and look for them, listen for them in your own conversations and politicians' conversations, and see which you find most attractive for moving the world forward for the next generation and the next generation and the next generation, especially if you have kids and grandkids. But even if you don't, do you want more individualism or more community and relationship? Do you want more violence or more compassion? Do you want more slogans and labels or more understanding of complex issues? Those are important questions because we get slogans and labels and generalizations every day thrown at us, and they're virtually meaningless. And they're repeated by people who are too lazy to do their own thinking. I'll stop there. That was a masculine move at the end.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Those are some wise words, and absolutely. I'm gonna look up Carol Gilligan's book so I get a better understanding of it as well. Because you know, people always talk about having a peace of mind. We've always used that expression. And the older you get, the more you want that, the more you need that.
Mm.
I mean, if studies have shown that the more your mind is occupied and busy and fraught with just issues, and that's going to affect your overall body and your health issues as well. And the older you get, you realize the importance of health. I really realized, I mean, I should say, I really wish that was something that we could talk to school. Like our whole education system needs to be revamped. That's a whole other conversation for a different day. But as we wrap things up, I want to move into the topic of who do we want to lift up as someone that we feel has either displayed or currently displaying the characteristics of being fully human. And I have someone in mind that I will go with, and this person's been on my mind and my heart this past couple of week or so. And I would say Michael Jackson.
Mm.
And I say Michael Jackson for a variety of reasons. First, let me just address the monkey in the room. I don't really believe the allegations. That's another conversation, but so I'm not a person that believes that. So someone's listening to that to say, well, what about all these things? I just believe that's hearsay. That's a whole other conversation we can get into. So despite that, what I'm looking at Michael Jackson as humanitarian, listen to his music. He didn't come out with songs that were, full of hate, full of divisiveness, heal the world, songs that he wanted to lift people up. I mean, I can go back all the way to the Jacksons when he was singing the song, about how we all God's children, the same blood as in you, as in me. All his songs were songs about togetherness, black and white, singing about doesn't matter, having to choose if and that I think. And one time I remember a person I was in a meeting, community meeting, it's come apart. And the couple had just came back from Africa, maybe from being there for like 6 years. And they're, sharing their experience. And I'll never forget this. They said that for the first time, they didn't feel the weight of race dominating all of the conversations. And I was thinking for a minute, like, wow, we're so caught with race here that it's literally, you can't see the forest for the trees. It's
Mm.
literally in everything we do, all the conversations. So to be able to walk and live life without having to worry about the element of I would say the arbitrage of race around your neck, I can't even really imagine what that would feel like or what that would be like. So when you look at a person like Michael Jackson, who you've been entertaining since you were a child, you've never known what it's like to be a regular human being. You have no idea what it looks like to just grow up and go play and live a normal life. You've always been in the spotlight. You've always had to be at your best, and you've always had other people surrounding you trying to tell you what to do and control your life. None of us can even imagine what that looks like. And then you get to the point where you are the most popular entertainer in the world, you know, that's going to come with cons. And the cons are obviously people don't want to bring you, especially when you start talking about doing things like I want to start buying catalogs. When you start going against the norm, you're gonna be attacked for that. And I think we saw that. But I say Michael Jackson for that reason because I can listen to Michael Jackson, and most people are, who I talk to about it, I even click on the songs now. That's the benefit of YouTube. You can look at the comments of people who are writing comments on the songs, how much people love Michael Jackson around the world to this day. You know, consider he died in 2006 or nine, yeah, 2009, I believe, and for him still to be talked about, revered, treasured, and just like I said, as a person who, when he got opportunity, he was for kids, he was for justice, he was for love. He didn't put any particular race out there before any other race. Artists like that you just don't see exist anymore at that level. And so I have to say, for him, that's somebody who exhibited fully human characteristics in my opinion.
Yeah, good. Thank you for that. Um, I still don't know how he did that moonwalk thing. I've tried to do that, and I can't even come close to it. My my legs don't do that. So I'm going to mention a guy that I actually met once, but I know primarily through his books, his writings, and his audios. But his name is Jack Cornfield. He grew up in the Northeast. I think he went to Dartmouth. He's in his mid to late 70s. He joined the Peace Corps rather than go into the draft for Vietnam, and ended up in Southeast Asia and stayed and trained as a Buddhist monk for years in the forest monasteries of, I think, Burma and Thailand, if I'm not mistaken. And then he came back here after a while, got a PhD in psychology, and has been teaching ever since. And he has this gift, in my listening to him and reading him, of translating what he learned as an ordained Buddhist monk in the forest monastery tradition, integrated with Western psychology, of just really a gentle gift that's honest and true, that deals with everything from kindness to loving to forgiveness to compassion to mercy. And he's just done this amazing body of work. He worked with some other folks with the gangs in Los Angeles some decades ago. Has really brought his gifts out in to the world in a variety of ways, and he's a great storyteller. He has a dry sense of humor, and he often makes his teachings work with parables that kind of show us what the teaching is about. Some of them are laugh out loud funny. So he was a great teacher for me because of the humor and his ability to communicate at that level. But I got to spend a week out in Joshua Tree, California, probably 1999 or 98, with him and the psychologist Stan Groff, and did a weekend of holotropic breath work, a week rather, of holotropic breath work and meditation training. And it was just great, just a way to kind of open up and learn new modalities and get a more of a sense of being, as we like to say, fully human. So that's Jack Cornfield. I highly recommend his writings and teachings.
Well, thank you for that. I'm definitely going to look him up. If you wouldn't mind, if you can send me some things you have that are on top, some of your favorite, kind of get me started. I know I can Google it, but if you have anything that you have already,
okay,
share. I'd love to see what your initial what you come up with. But we've reached the end of our show. Thank you again, Reggie, for choosing a wonderful topic, for writing a book that you've written, for being a person who exhibits the fully human characteristics. And that's what we need more of. It's helping me learn, helping me grow. And that's what I think, that most of us have to be willing to get into a conversation with the intent to learn. Again, Stephen R. Covey is one of my favorite authors. And, one of the 7 habits he talks about is seek first to understand, then to be understood. I think if most of us actually follow that, the world will be a different place, and then definitely we have a different perspective on how we live in the world. So, with that being said, I want to wish everybody a wonderful life until next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Let's all continue to stay on the path to become more fully human. Next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Look forward to seeing everybody then. Thank you.